My name is Mallory Moreau, and today we will be discussing the United States Department of Education and the history of the federal government's involvement in the United States educational system. The U.S. Department of Education and the federal government's involvement in the country's educational system has a fascinating history that many people do not know about. Today we will be discussing some of the main topics that occurred to create the U.S. Department of Education. The three main topics that we will cover are the foundation from 1867 to the 1890s, the buildup from the 1890s to 1979, and the establishment of the U.S. Department of Education in 1979 to its present-day state. In 1867, Andrew Johnson signed into legislation the first U.S. Department of Education. The main focus was to collect data and statistics from schools across the country. Unfortunately, in 1868, the department was demoted and split up into several different federal agencies. During the build-up stage of the department, we see the U.S. Department of Education get moved between many different federal agencies. It goes through many name changes, does not have many responsibilities, and remains small in size. During the 1960s, the main act that was enacted was the Elementary and Secondary School Act to help fight the war on poverty. According to Catherine A. Paul, as mandated in the act, funds are authorized for professional development, instructional materials, resources to support educational programs, and the promotion of parental involvement. This act would be the foundation for future programs for the U.S. Department of Education. The Higher Education Act would also be put into place to strengthen the educational resources of our colleges and universities and to provide financial assistance for students in the post-secondary and higher education. According to J. McCants, this would provide the guidelines for federal student aid. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act would desegregate schools and prohibit discrimination, thus providing equal educational opportunities for all. 103 bills were attempted to be passed between 1908 and 1975 to establish the U.S. Department of Education. None were successful until Abraham Ribicoff, the National Education Association, and the Labor Coalition Clearinghouse worked with President Jimmy Carter to create the Department of Education Organization Act of 1977, which would officially establish the department in 1979. Shirley Huffstedler would be the first Secretary of Education for the U.S. Department of Education. She focused on 4 goals. According to D.T. Stallings, one set of goals focused on streamlining and strengthening the political workings of the federal-state relationship. A second set of goals reinforced the notion that the department would not supersede local control by attempting to impose restrictive regulations. A third set of goals focused on issues of educational equity. Finally, Huffstedler worked to make education important to the nation again. 10 other secretaries, listed here, would succeed her and work to meet her goals that she initially established. They also brought in some of their own ideas. Some failed, others have been revised, and few have worked from the very beginning. The Goals 2000 plan, for example, was one that failed. Its purpose was to implement more federal control of the U.S. educational system. According to Heiss, Goals 2000 recognized the overall failure of past incremental education reform efforts and embraced a new approach, systematic reform. The department attempted to implement this new control system, but ultimately failed as it was unable to specify each state's needs for their schools. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act was revised to the No Child Left Behind Act. It emphasized accountability for academic success for all students, flexibility of the use of government funds, establishing a research-based education system, and increasing options for parents. The fault with this act was the accountability. Some students, especially those with learning disabilities, simply could not reach the standards the act emphasized, thus dropping overall standardized testing scores. It was then revised to the Every Student Succeeds Act. It made the goals much more attainable for educators to reach so that all students truly could excel. The Common Core Standards idea was a great idea for some states. According to Porter, McCann, Huang, and Yang, the Common Core Standards released represent an unprecedented shift away from disparate content guidelines across individual states in the areas of English language, arts, and mathematics. The Common Core Standards Idea Initiative developed these standards as a state-led effort to establish consensus on expectations for student knowledge and skills that should be developed in grades K through 12. However, not all states use this method, but rather choose to use their own in place to appease parents and their ideas for how their children should be taught. Today, the U.S. Department of Education is still the smallest cabinet-level office. It only has 3,912 staff members and works with a $68 billion budget. They work every day according to their mission to serve America's students, to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. Thank you so much for listening.